All right, so what do you make of Donald Trump's presidency so far? Get in touch with us. We're really keen to hear your thoughts over the past 100 days. And we're talking about how Trump communicates, right? The platforms that he uses, moments that stick out for you, particularly when he talks about some of his foreign policy. Send us a WhatsApp on 072 110 5584 or give us a call on 010 594 6010. Let's now get our panel to join us in the discussion. We're joined by University of Pretoria International Relations expert, Professor Christopher Isike, University of Johannesburg's economics professor, Prof. Daniel Meyer, staff editor, Toby Shapshak, and brand reputation management strategist, Mr. Solly Moeng. Gentlemen, a good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, one thing you can't deny is just the colorful language that is used by Donald Trump. Even today, as he marked 100 days, he says, you heard him there, the most successful 100 days in the history of the US, he says. And Solly, perhaps we can start with you. The tone of the past 100 days and the way that Trump has communicated and perhaps what he's done, good or bad, for brand USA as the world watches on.
Thank you, Naledi. I think, he's only listening to his own voice. Trump is only listening to his own voice. The markets in America, even today, as I speak to you, don't seem to agree with what he's saying. We've seen the numbers are going down all around the world. But he also forgets that the USA is a very important player in the global system. It's anyone who leads a country like the USA in the global system must realize, must know, never forget that it's not just about America. It's about the balance, the role it plays, whether one agrees with it or not, around the world. We've seen Canada is unhappy, the EU is unhappy, China is unhappy, Africa is unhappy. But it's also an opportunity. Look, what Trump is an opportunity for Africa, for instance, to be less reliant on aid. The truth is that American money doesn't belong to us. It belongs to American people. So any president of America has the right to say, hey, you know what, we've been giving money to these people for so long, but they don't seem to appreciate it. I think he's right in that way. So it's an opportunity for us to realize that maybe we need to do something different. Inter-Africa trade has to be boosted, but Africa has also to learn to be a lot more transactional. We mustn't go there into foreign policy, foreign relations, foreign trade, looking for love in the wrong places. It's not about the Russians love us or the Chinese hate us. There's no such thing. We need to say what works for us in terms of America, what works for us in terms of China, what works for us in terms of other partners. Yeah. We'll agree on some things, disagree on some things.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Let's and that's we've heard the word transactional quite a lot over the past 100 days. Prof. May, I want to bring you in here because I think over the past, since the beginning of the second term for Donald Trump, maybe you can give us some perspective on just what tweets can do for economic stability and just how global economics have been impacted by, singular moments of a tweet, a post, and certainly how markets have reacted, right? The power of that communication over the past 100 days.
Well, the world has changed, and it's the use of social media is upon us, and we must use it. And at least we can say the 100 days were not boring. It was interesting. This is the world's biggest, largest economic experiment ever. So let's see how it's going to pan out. There's going to be more shocks coming in. We're not surprised that there's going to be a trade war. There was no surprises for me since the start of the 100 days. Look, he's got 4 years. He's got many things to do. He made a lot of promises, and he is implementing those promises as far as he can. He's got 48 months, and he had more than 50% people voting for him. So he's got that support that he started with. He's gone down in the ratings, I think at about 45% approval rate at the moment. And he needs to have results. And I think in terms of the economy, the dollar has weakened. That's not all bad for the US trade. It's not all bad for them. Although their GDP in the first quarter has gone down by 0.3%, their imports increased by 41% in the first quarter. Employment, they still created 200,000 jobs in the first quarter, which is unbelievable. Inflation went down, not up. It's currently down from 2.8 to 2.4%. fuel and energy cost has gone down in the US. So there's some positive, some negative things happening. The stock exchanges obviously went down by like 5 to 9%, the different S&P and Wall Street and so on. So there's a little bit of shock and uncertainty, not a little bit, huge uncertainty at the moment in the global economy. Even the IMF downgraded all of the economic forecasting. But I think it's just a rapid reaction at the moment. There's going to be some more stability coming in. He's already given his own automotive sector 2 years to settle down and to prepare for making the MAGA, to make the factories, the Ford and those General Motors coming back into the system with their imports and the parts. So there's some stability happening in my point of view, but it has been a rough ride for the first 100 days.
Yeah. I want to look at here's the thing. So we talk about how it is an interesting time for global politics and times are changing, and also what the impact of social media, how Trump is using it. But Toby, perhaps you can help us with this, because one could argue that this has actually been quite intentional. This isn't just, a president who haphazardly gets on social media and uses it. And I want to look at that. So this is and in fact, what we'll do throughout this conversation is look at a few of his tweets. This is one tweet that Trump has put up, and he tweets quite a bit, but take a look at this one. It reads, Elon Musk will be briefed by the Pentagon. This is on the 21st of March, by the Pentagon about the USA's top secret plans against China should there be a war, according to the failing New York Times, one of the worst and most purposely inaccurate newspapers in the world. The fake concept of the story is that because Elon does some business in China, that he's conflicted, and immediately go to top Chinese officials and spill the beans. Ratings challenged, fake news is CNN. So, and I won't read all of it, but perhaps we'll keep it up on the screen for a while for those that want to read it. But the point I'm driving at, Toby, is you've got Elon Musk, you've got this Doge department that has been set up. Elon Musk is a massive tech player. So the use of how Trump communicates, would you argue, absolutely intentional?
Yes, intentional is being very intentional. But the one thing we wouldn't say is that any of this behavior has been rational, because consequences are going to be a recession in the States, almost certainly. That's what everyone's talking about today. Confidence down, there's a whole bunch of things that are affecting the American economy. I've read 3 stories in the last 2 days about how the headline was, Trump is already ruining Christmas. So, for instance, people who run businesses have to order now to have stock available then. The great thing about social media is that you can tweet or post. He has his social network, Truth Social. I mean, there are so many conflicts of interest in the Trump administration and the people involved that it's extraordinary. It's an ethics-free zone in many ways, and the way he posts and Kate's is it's kind of strange, isn't it? It's kind of like the behavior of a petulant teenager, trashing his trashing the New York Times. Every kind of communication is analysis by politicians and professors is pretty much that he's out for retribution. He feels that he's a man of destiny because someone shot at him and missed. And, he's filled with his own certainty, which is kind of scary because irrationality has not been a key ingredient in these trade wars. I mean, when he stood up and held up that huge thing of tariffs, I mean, everyone thought they were generated by ChatGPT, and it turns out they probably were. It's a thumbsuck economic concept, and it's going to cause a lot of havoc for a lot of us. So, one of the big distributors told me today that the cost of RAM, of memory in a computer, has gone up 10%. And this is a product that usually goes down in price. That's the way economics work. Things go down in price. For them to go up 10%, so it's going to be 10% on the RAM. It's going to be 10% on the hard drive. It's going to be this on that. And then you're going to pay extra for shipping. So what it means is that all of us are going to pay more for the technology that we use. Yeah. And the problem with social media, Naledi, is that he can change his mind, and he often does, and there really are no adults in the room this time around in the second Trump administration. And we will all bear the consequences. I hear what you say about Africans need to look after ourselves, and aid is a gift, but actually, John F. Kennedy said we can't not do it. There's another logic to this, that the world is a better place when people aren't dying from diseases that are preventable. National NPR was talking about how all the funding meetings where people apply for grants just aren't happening. There's all of the grants for 5 years of scientific research down the line are just not being done in a range of different forms. So the knock-on effects are huge. Coming back to technology, obviously, it's a free-for-all where anyone can say anything on social media. And Elon Musk, who has an extraordinary amount of power for an unelected official, runs his own social network, and that has become, instead of in the traditional channels of communication, it's now a free-for-all on social media, and I don't know that that's a good thing. I don't know that we are seeing the best of humanity in this instance. I made a real point during first Trump administration. I saw lots of people, I tweeted Twitter earlier this year, I saw lots of people calling Trump stupid and all sorts of other things, and I got called stupid at school. I'll never call another human stupid. So I didn't participate in that kind of behavior, but the consequences are going to be huge. Millions of Africans will die because of this USA debacle.
And that power being exercised on social media. I want to bring in Professor Isike. Prof, perhaps you can help us with where this now starts to impact us as South Africans. Tweets that President Donald Trump of the US has put up about us as South Africans. And I want to show you perhaps two. You might remember this one. South Africa is being terrible. Listen to the words. South Africa is being terrible, plus to long-time farmers in the country. They're confiscating their land and farms, and much worse than that. What is much worse than that? A bad place to be right now, and we're stopping all federal funding. To go a step further, any farmer with family from South Africa seeking to flee that country for reasons of safety will be invited to the United States. That was one. You remember this one, I'm sure. Let's show you another one, because it's been a busy 100 days on social media where Donald Trump is concerned. He says South Africa's confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly. Which classes? It is a bad situation that the radical left media doesn't want to give so much attention or as much mention. A massive human rights violation with all caps at a minimum is happening for all to see. The United States will not stand for it. We will act. Also, I will be cutting off all future funding to South Africa until a full investigation of this situation has been completed. I remember when he showed up, Prof. Isike, when he announced the tariff hikes, and he had that board up on the podium, and he got to speaking to the hikes that South Africa would be getting, that 30% versus 60%. He then talked about how terrible things are happening in South Africa. Are we ever going to be able to tackle the narrative that he's creating of South Africa, Prof?
Well, let me start by talking about the pros and cons of social media diplomacy. I prefer to call it that, even though it is called digital diplomacy. But social media diplomacy makes it more lands it home squarely in terms of the ills that comes with it. When you say digital diplomacy, it gives it a fancy tweak that makes it okay. But social media diplomacy offers, a dynamic platform for, states and savvy presidents, to engage with global audiences, promotes transparency, and, it projects soft power, right? However, it presents a lot of challenges, including the potential for diplomatic missteps, and we've seen a lot of that with Mr. Trump. It also promotes the spread of misinformation and disinformation. Some of the information is peddled about South Africa, for example, fall into that category. And it also has security vulnerabilities because it does not allow for the proper vetting of information and communication that a Department of Foreign Affairs, or DERCO, as we have in South Africa, will allow you to. And that's where South Africa has been very responsible in its responses to Trump's misinformation about South Africa. So the effective use of social media diplomacy requires careful strategy, clear guidelines, and an understanding of its influence in international relations. And this is something that Mr. Trump does not have, that discipline to be able to allow what he says and what he does to be, to go through any kind of vetting. So he's a demagogue, an emperor of his own that does whatever he likes. And there are also security implications. We've seen this with his Secretary of Defense, who has, kind of compromised American security through the use of a signal platform to share, defense secrets. So these things are, they have their pros and cons. But coming to South Africa, I think that what South Africa has done has been good in terms of managing the use of social media, because our president responded, very quickly and used the opportunity to inform the world that a lot of the things that are being said are not correct. And then he informed the world about what was really happening. And that's, again, another good use of social media diplomacy, where you can use social media to communicate directly to different publics at the same time. It is very cost effective. So we can continue to do that while also engaging diplomatically using diplomatic channels, as South Africa has done. So I think that there's a chance for us to counter it, and we're countering that if you look at the kind of support that came from the EU and other countries to South Africa during that period.
They obviously are, and Professor Isike, they're talking about some of the instances that we've seen that have had massive implications. So let's talk about what those implications look like for us. Opportunities perhaps that South Africa might be able to leverage off of how Trump communicates, and what it is that we learn from it, and what it does for brand South Africa. We're going to talk about that on the other side of this short break, and of course taking your calls on 010-594-6010. The story that Trump has told us about his presidency over the past 100 days. We're back in a moment. Well, welcome back. You're still watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition. One of our panelists this evening calling it the era of digital diplomacy. We look back on Donald Trump's presidency in the past 100 days, as today the U.S. president marking 100 days of his time for the second time in the White House. And we're taking your calls on 072-110-5584, or give us a call on 010-594-6010 with our panelists as we talk about just the impact of what Trump's presidency has really had on his foreign policy, especially here in South Africa. Here's a tweet that also caught our eye, and we're going to be showing you a lot of these throughout this discussion because, of course, Trump taking a lot to social media and his platform that he has as well, Truth Social. This one comes up. How could we be expected to go to South Africa for the very important G20 meeting when land confiscation and genocide is the primary topic of conversation? The taking the land of white farmers and then killing them and their families. The media refuses to report on this. The United States has held back all contributions to South Africa. Is this where we want to be for the G20? I don't think so. And lots of exclamation marks. Well, yeah, an exclamation mark at the end of that. Solly, you hear that tweet, and I know that our panel may not be able to see the tweets, but you hear what he tweeted. I think that was on the 11th of April on our chairing of G20, and I think to myself, is this good or bad for the brand of South Africa?
Well, the same way I say to people, the world will always throw stuff at you. What matters is how you respond to that stuff. As a destination brand that we are at South Africa, America is throwing lots of stuff at us. Some of it is true, some of it is misinformed. But in the end, it's about how we respond to that stuff. All right, and the good thing about it is that Trump, he was described by a former ambassador, Rasul, as an equal opportunity offender. I think that's pretty much what he is. He's targeting everyone around the world. The little board that he had that was probably generated by AI that was referred to earlier was hitting at countries like Lesotho that he doesn't know, that he had not heard of before. I mean, like, why would you want to do that? So as a country, as South Africa, I think we know that the EU has already come out in our support. Right, so we are transactional. The EU may support us on certain things, but we also know that the EU supports Israel.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So we need to say, how do we agree? What do we agree with the EU? What do we disagree on? How do we maximize the gains, and how do we minimize the losses? The same thing with America. Trump is going to be president for 4 years. It's a pity that he's only just starting. He's going to go away very soon. But we mustn't build the long term on the basis of a 4-year presidency of Trump. But we must say that how do we make sure that this doesn't happen to us in the future?
Yeah.
The same thing, last point, the same thing is happening with the EU. The EU, when Russia went into Ukraine, the EU started saying, damn, we rely too much on Russian energy, oil and gas, we need to stop. The same way, the EU needs to be having questions about NATO, its reliance on security, but it's supported by America. It needs to have that conversation. We in Africa also have our own set of questions. In South Africa, what do we do to make sure that no other president of America or China or another part of the world comes up and does this to us, and we sit there helpless? Those are the conversations. It's an opportunity for us to look into the mirror and decide how do we strengthen brand South Africa, brand Africa.
Yeah, I want to show a few messages that have come in from our viewers. Of course, those that are sending in WhatsApps as we reflect on 100 days of Donald Trump. We'll bring some of those WhatsApps now up on the screen as you reflect on what stands out for you with his time. Good evening, Naledi. The 100 days of Trump is a disaster. Hlengani Makubela in Pretoria. Straight to the point, Hlengani. Thank you so much for sending in that WhatsApp. Harekwi Sitlhodi in Ventersdorp says, good evening. I'm not content with Trump's presidency. He could have made a good president if he wasn't too much of himself and not undermining to other countries. Harekwi, thank you so much for that. Anonymous says, good evening, South Africa. I think President Trump is moving too fast to fulfill his earthly assignment, and his assignment fringes the toes of the opponents. Anonymous, we appreciate that. I immediately wanted to bring Toby in because you've got, for instance, the impact of some of the decisions that are made by Trump, so the fallout and implications of the tariffs. You've got this, and perhaps you can help us understand it, Toby. Amazon versus Trump seeming to be quite the thing right now. Donald Trump, of course, having called to talk with Jeff Bezos of Amazon. Amazon going all the way to saying that, well, now they're going to detail and show their customers what it costs to bring some of their shipments in, whether it be a Temu or a Shein or whatever it may be, after Amazon simply failed to try and compete. Break that down for us and what you think in the long run this is going to do.
It's a very interesting situation. The Chinese fast manufacturing business, which is what we see with Shein and Temu, is just the tip of the iceberg of China's remarkable manufacturing ability. And what those two websites or services allow is for anyone to buy pretty cheap, frankly disposable fashion at a very low cost. A $10 T-shirt now, however, will cost $24.50 because of the 145%. So it's an extra nearly $15. It's going to cost Americans. The bottom, it's going to cost Americans, and it's going to cost the rest of us because of the interconnectedness of the global supply chain. We've seen the prices of technology creeping up. I've been watching a Mac M4 that I wanted to buy myself, and the price has gone up $1,000 in the last month. That's the kind of impact that we're going to see a lot more of. The fundamental reason the global ecosystem works so well is because everything works so well together, and it's kind of like a form of economic suicide to break that system. We saw what happened to the supply chain during COVID. We saw how destructive that was when that giant ship got stuck in the Panama Canal. There's a really famous picture that I use in all my talks of a guy in a big digger digging this thing out. And I say, there you go. The world supply chain was broken, and there's one African fixing the problem with the digger. So it's kind of like economic suicide. We will all be the poorer for. But it's, there's no talking to a narcissist, is there?
Sure. Interesting words. Prof. Mayer, let's bring you in here. I mean, there's of course the words, and we just put that tweet up. I won't put it up again, but where Trump says nobody's getting off the hook for the unfair trade tariffs that have been charged to the United States. And you've got the sense that China's digging in their heels. I mean, I'm asking you to throw the bones, if you will, but where you see this going in the long run, where China seemingly saying, well, let's see how far you're going to push things. And it seems that it's possible that this might actually see Donald Trump easing off. I mean, just today, you've got BBC reporting that Donald Trump has taken action to ease the impact of new tariffs on the car-making industry, as an example.
Yeah, as I said in the beginning, he tried too much, too quickly to have a successful outcome in this trade war. So he should have done it much slower. We know that the US has got a huge trade deficit, and he wants to turn this around to a positive side for more exports than imports. So any import into a country is a leakage. Export is making the economy grow. And that is the Chinese model. They've got this wonderful export-based model. They don't have a huge consumer model like the US. US is more a consumer model. And the government in China is subsidizing the industries that's manufacturing. And they can manufacture cheaper than anybody else, mass manufacturing with a population of 1.4 billion people. They can easily manufacture and dump stuff into a country like South Africa. We lost our textile industry, we lost our steel industry, we are going to lose our vehicle manufacturing industry also because of this very effective model that China has got. And I think this war between China and US is going to continue for a while. And Trump's mission is to reduce this deficit. And he promised he's going to do it, but it's going to take a long time for the US to kickstart their manufacturing sector, if at all they could do it. They are more now focused on the tertiary sector, the services sector, than the secondary sector, which is the manufacturing sector. Yeah. So it's going to take structural change, and it doesn't happen fast. We know that the motor manufacturing companies had a meeting with President Trump, and there's some discussion how they're going to do this. So I think he's also talking to business. It's not to say he's not talking to business, but there is also more pain coming because he is also trying to reduce the government debt in the US. They've got huge debts and they cannot continue with this. So there's more pain going to come. And that is one of his promises. He's going to reduce the debt. And that process is going to also take some serious pain for the whole of the world. It's a global issue that's going to happen again.
Yeah. One of the things that many pundits have argued is at the heart of his contention for South Africa is, of course, our position on what is taking place in Gaza, having taken the matter all the way to the ICJ to argue that what is taking place in Gaza is a genocide. Trump has taken to social media in various different occasions to talk about the situation in the Middle East. We're going to chat a little bit about that on the other side of this. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're reflecting on 100 days of Donald Trump's presidency of the United States of America and certainly how it's impacted us here in South Africa. And we look at tweets, which has been quite the feature over 100 days of how the US president has communicated his positions on various issues, especially foreign policy. Let's see what he's been saying about what's happening in Gaza. We bring that up now. He tweeted, I think, on the 6th of February. The Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting. You'd remember that at some point Donald Trump was talking about his vision for what Gaza would look like. There was even an AI-generated video that was making the rounds on social media of what his dream Gaza would look like. And he says they would actually have a chance to be happy, safe, and free. The U.S., working with great development teams for all over the world, would slowly and carefully begin the construction of what would become one of the greatest and most spectacular developments of its kind on Earth. And Professor Isik, I think as we close off, that issue, Gaza, a massive bone of contention for the US and South Africa, and Trump not just digging in his heels in support, certainly, of Israel, but in even going as far as to put together a vision of what his Gaza would look like. What do we do as South Africa?
Well, like you said, this is one of the thorny issues. I actually would think it's the main issue for the Trump administration, the fact that South Africa took Israel to the ICJ. You will recall that all of this onslaught on South Africa started after Netanyahu's visit to the White House the first time. So that's a thorny issue. Look, many people have said that there is a logic, there's a science to Trump's behavior, to his madness, and there is what we call the madman theory of foreign policy that talks about a president behaving very irrationally, very intentionally so, in order to cast doubts and that would lead to fear with his opponents, and then allowing him to get his way with many of his opponents, right? And we've seen how sometimes if you want to do the analysis, you check the end result against the madness. In the case of Trump, when you check, you would see that there is no end result. I mean, if you take the tariffs, for example, there's been a lot of big talk around them, and then there's also been a lot of rollbacks, some of them quiet, but some of them also clearly well known now. So it also speaks of the lack of preparation and what I also refer to as knee-jerk foreign policy. You on the campaign trail, somebody whispers something to you about South Africa, you immediately tweet about it. Becomes policy, you know. So these are the challenges with this Twitter diplomacy or social media diplomacy. And South Africa cannot do anything right now about it, but to communicate its foreign policy principles and position consistently and ensure that they cohere, they align with one another.
Yeah.
Over time. Once we see the alignment between our foreign policy principles and our actions, they will have no choice but to accept our position.
Yeah, I really wish we had more time, gentlemen, but thank you so much for speaking to us. I think this has been really insightful and certainly interesting times to be watching global politics. Thank you so much to Solly Mweng, brand reputation strategist, to Toby Shapshak, editor of Stuff, Daniel Meyer, Professor Daniel Meyer, that is, economics professor at the University of Johannesburg, and Professor Christopher Isike there, who is, of course, head of the Department of Political Sciences and director of the African Center for the Study of the United States. Right, you're still watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition. Let's look at other WhatsApps, in fact, that have come in on this discussion. And in fact, we'll continue taking them. 072-110-5584. Anonymous says, 100 days of Trump is a mixed bag, threats and intimidation, followed by let's make a deal, protection of the most privileged community on the African continent because of their skin color, energy price down, very good, disaster for the Palestinians, Ukraine, Canada, China, Panama, disaster. Anonymous, thank you for that. Another anonymous saying, greetings, SA. USA should remove Trump before it's too late. Time is ticking. 4 more years to go, though. Sianda Mtwini says, Trump is absolutely disappointing the way he seems to look down on South Africa. How does a president listen to a group of individuals engaging him on foreign issues of South Africa? The agenda seems to be against the SA government. All right. Thank you so much for those WhatsApps.